The very first Manitoba Podcast Festival goes down International Podcast Day, Sunday, September 30th, 12 to 4 p.m. at the Park Theatre. Manitoba's podcast community gathers for an afternoon of networking, education, and so much more, featuring local podcast hosts, producers, radio personalities, taking part in panel discussions and Q&As. Take part in this fantastic networking opportunity. You can like us on Facebook at Manitoba Podcast Festival. Tickets are just $5. The very first Manitoba Podcast Festival, Sunday, September 30th at the Park Theatre.
Thank you to everyone who supports my dad's show. If you'd like to support Witchpolice Radio, go to patreon.com/witchpolice today.
You're listening to Garbage Hill, Winnipeg's first podcast network.
All right, welcome to Witchpolice Radio. I'm your regular host, Sam, and I am in Wolseley once again, which is always nice. And it's funny because the guest I have here today, or the guest whose home I'm in today, it seems like you've been on the show before. If people have been paying attention to kind of the posts that have been going on the Witchpolice social media and things like that, you will have seen Joe Curtis show up recently a few times.
Yes.
You played a show in my backyard.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I interviewed you for an episode of Mum's House. So,
yes.
I mean, despite all of that, you've never actually formally been
on the show.
On the podcast.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's very cool. Hopefully we're not oversaturating the audience.
I'm doing it in reverse. I'm doing it backwards.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. Usually I'll have someone on the show and then they'll play my house. But it's cool. I'm glad to have you on this format now.
It's my pleasure, yeah.
It's just very cool. So I'm going to assume that not everyone who's listening to this has heard the other interview or seen the other interview.
Okay, yeah.
So we may cover some of the same ground.
Yeah.
But that's cool.
That's cool.
It doesn't hurt. So just, I guess, the first thing I wanted to get into, just because you played the show in my backyard recently, for me, one of the highlights of that show was your cover of The Wait.
Oh, cool.
And it's actually funny because as you were playing it, I noticed this on the video of it. My parents happened to be biking by, and they knew this show was happening.
Right, yeah.
So they just kind of poked their heads in, and then I think when they recognized what you were playing, they came in further.
Ah, nice. Drew them in.
Yeah. So, I mean, and it's kind of interesting, too, because the first time I heard you play was also a cover, was the Sam Cooke cover you did at Mum's House. And it's weird I'm saying Mum's House and my parents because there's no connection. The show Mum's House. But, like, so what goes into selecting a cover for you? Because both of those songs and other ones I've seen videos of you playing and stuff, you seem to pick ones that suit you very well. So
thanks.
I guess as an artist, what do you look for in a cover song that will, what works for you, I guess? Like, how do you know what's going to fit your style?
I think everybody, artists, when you're looking for songs to cover, obviously a real strong song, but something that you think that plays to your strengths as a performer and something that resonates with you. The more that it resonates with you, the easier it is to get behind it and sort of get inside it lyrically as a singer. Yeah, absolutely. And then you put your spin on it, and that's basically kind of what I look for. Okay. And I'm a big fan also of doing covers. Like you hear somebody do a cover of a really fantastic song, you go like, I would love to put a different spin on their spin on that song. Right. That's sometimes it's real inspirational to hear.
Well, and I guess The Wait too. That's one that's been covered by everybody. I mean, like there's so many great covers of that one. So is that directly from the band that you're covering that? Or?
No, actually, it's funny. This is sort of my spin on the version of the song that was done by Aretha Franklin with Dwayne Allman playing guitar. Yeah.
I was going to ask about that. Kind of next. Yeah. That's. I mean, because there's definitely a more soulful version. I mean, the song itself is great to begin with, but that's.
It's a more soulful. Yeah, somebody said to me, "Have you heard that? Have you heard The Wait by Aretha Franklin? She sings it, and Dwayne Allman's playing guitar." And I was like, "That's not a thing. Yeah, that never happened." And then I dug it up. And I was like, oh yeah, I found it on vinyl, and it's a great version of that song. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because Dwayne Allman has that kind of history of playing with all these soul artists. Right. That, like the stuff he did with Wilson Pickett is unbelievable.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's a cover of a cover, like their version of Hey Jude they did.
Right. Absolutely.
That song blows me away every time. The soloing and the screaming at the end of it and everything. Yeah. So that's
And legend has it that was Dwayne Allman's kind of like his idea to push doing that version to do that cover. It's a fantastic version of that song. Yeah.
So I guess that explains kind of what I was asking. But like when does something just kind of tweak your ear when you're listening to it and sort of think, oh, this shit, I could do this. This could be my thing.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, and sometimes it comes from other people. Say, you should. Have you ever thought about doing this song?
Right.
But sometimes it's just something in it that you just go like, there's just something about lyrically or melodically or something that you go like, I think this is something that I'd love to take a swing at.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't always work, but as of recently, my batting average has been pretty good.
Yeah, well, based on what I've heard, anyway, it's pretty awesome. Yeah. So I guess, especially when you're doing a cover of not to dwell on covers too much, but you're doing a cover of a cover. How do you bring your own thing to that? Because you've got not only the cover you're covering, but also the original kind of in the back of your head.
And sometimes you use it as a sort of a jumping off point. If somebody does something like maybe it's a more straight ahead, like a rock thing, and they do sort of a soul thing on it, and you're like, well, and maybe it's back in tempo, and you're like, I would love to do that like a soul thing, but I would take it up in tempo. I'd maybe change the key. I would maybe do this. I've got ideas for maybe an arrangement thing or something like that, or a segue into something else. Yeah.
Where just to completely switch topics. Where does your voice come from? I mean, I think that in both of those covers we're talking about specifically, and in your original stuff as well, you seem to have a very kind of pure tone to it. And
thanks.
I was thinking about this when I was watching the video back of some of the songs you played at the show, and it almost seems like even when your voice gets rough, like emotionally to go with the song, it always sort of resolves on a pure sound.
Yeah.
Is that something you do intentionally? Like, where does that kind of smoothness come from? I guess.
Yeah, just kind of. Thank you first. That's something that I think has always been just something. This just it has just been in my voice. Okay. For a long time, I really hated it because so much music that I really love. Otis Redding, Wilson Pickett.
Sure.
There's a lot of great pop and rock through like the 70s and the 80s where people got that sandpaper in their voice and whatnot. And I just didn't naturally. And everything's never come out that way.
Right.
Just like that for me. So it took a long time for me to sort of develop that. And I really just didn't like the fact that most everything I sang came across pretty clean.
Yeah.
But as time goes by and you develop certain techniques and whatnot, now I've sort of got a little bit of that more in my bag.
Yeah.
But that's just sort of just you sing the way you sing kind of thing, and that's what it took a while for me to realize that Otis Redding sounds that way because that's just the way Otis Redding sounds, right?
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. So you work with what you got. You can develop certain things, but and I like. And now I've become more enamored of it. The fact that I have a couple of different things in my bag.
Well, kind of the reason I asked, it's interesting you mentioned Otis Redding and Wilson Pickett and guys like that, because I've always felt that I like those voices. I like the rough voices. My favorite singer of all time, like in terms of vocals, is Ray Charles for sure. Hands down. Like he just has that like something commanding about it, and also something very very wounded sounding about it.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And I've always felt often like the majority of the music I listen to is by artists who have not necessarily bad voices, but there's something odd about them. There's something rough about them, or sad about them, or even out of tune. I mean, like Neil Young, for example. I love his voice. It's a weird voice, but
absolutely,
it conveys what he's trying to convey.
Absolutely.
And so, I feel like that I often have a hard time, not always, but with pure voices, clean voices,
right?
Because it sort of seems like, they're not delivering that kind of depth.
There's like a certain character.
Yeah, it's a character, but you have character to it. The emotion comes through, despite the cleanness. So, like, how do you? Obviously, the raspy voices some of these other guys are not put on. It's a natural voice. But how do you convey something like, for example, something that's very sad with a clean, pure sounding voice like that? Like,
I think it's all in the phrasing. Okay. I think that's a big thing. And a lot of the singers that we're talking about, we've talked before about Sam Cooke,
right? And he's very clean,
master, and it's a master of phrasing.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge part of that. It's not. It's sometimes it's. Well, so much of the time, it's not what you say, but how you say it, kind of thing.
Sure.
And it's if you don't have. If you're not Joe Cocker and you can't just kind of have your voice explode when you want to have this thing happen, there's other things there's other other ways to mine that kind of that vein of emotion kind of thing. And that comes through the phrasing of vibrato and all those things like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I guess Sam Cooke phrasing is it's perfect example.
Absolutely,
Phrasing, and the yodeling stuff and everything. It's just super cool. Yeah. But then like we're talking about Change Is Gonna Come. You covered it. That's an extremely emotional song.
Yeah.
And he does it really cleanly. There's no grit to his voice, but it's
enough. But you're hanging on every note, right?
For sure.
You're hanging on every note.
So that's the phrasing, I guess. Yeah.
And it's when you put all of those things together like that, when you have that someone like Sam Cooke, like command of your emotions and be able to emote like that.
Yeah.
It's unbeatable. Yeah.
So what is your background as far as singing then? Because I know, again, if people want to look up the other interview we did on Mom's House, we talk a lot about your guitar playing and your kind of experience, backing up other artists.
Yeah.
But we didn't really get too much into the vocals. What kind of background do you have? I mean, have you just always been able to sing, or did you?
You know what? I when I was a kid, I used to sing in church a little bit, like in church choir, but I was not like I was certainly not. Like lead vocalist in the church choir type of thing. That's not my background or experience. But as a kid coming up, I've always been enamored of vocals and particularly harmonies.
Okay.
And for whatever reason, from the time I was a little kid, we'd be driving around in the car doing whatever, and I'd be listening to like a Carpenter song or whatever. I would sometimes sing along, but I would never sing like if it was like a root and a third and a fifth, I would sing the seventh or the ninth or whatever. I would add a harmony to whatever I heard.
That's where kind of there was
just find the whole. Yeah, it was just I just gravitated towards that.
Okay.
And my ear gets tweaked by extended harmonies.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah.
And that's sort of where it all kind of started. And then when I got into playing in bands, I was, I worked with a gentleman who said to me one day, said like, you're not a bad guitar player, but not bad guitar players are kind of a dime a dozen.
Yeah,
but if you sing, if you can sing, you're worth your weight in gold. And I thought, that's kind of interesting. So it was like, well, harmonies came to me relatively easy. So I started singing more and more and more and more, but not really doing lead vocals. Right. But that was kind of good because it warmed me into it. And then at a certain point, it was like, well, maybe I'll sing a song.
Sure.
Maybe I'll sing 2 songs. Maybe I'll sing 3 songs.
And then now you're singing all.
No, you're singing all. Yeah.
Well, that ability to do that with the harmonies, I guess, probably was really helpful for you playing in other bands because you could just do the backup vocals like.
Yeah. In my work as a side musician for other artists, it's like that's one of the things that I really try to keep sharp on is to come in and have those tools. So you can just kind of walk in and find a place to sing. Where okay, just do what you do, and I'll just find the place to be.
Right, they don't have to direct you.
They don't have to direct you. You try and do as much of that as you can.
That's cool. That's probably not that common, I don't think. I mean, I know a lot of people who are, especially if they have a long history of being a musician, they can sing, but I mean, just being able to pick up the harmonies that easily is, I don't know.
Yeah, the faster you can do it, the better, and the more you can it makes it comfortable for the artist that you're working with.
Sure.
And that's kind of that's a cool thing. And the side benefit is that when you're doing your own thing, it's just you can change gears real quick as well too. So
yeah. Okay, well, a follow-up question to that then is when you're doing your own stuff, and like you said, you kind of are used to picking out harmonies in other people's songs. Is it harder for you to write just the main vocal line because you've got the harmonies kind of in your head? Or?
No, because they sort of go together. They kind of go together.
Yeah.
So like I'll hear it as a whole thing. Okay. So that's kind of it actually winds up being of benefit. So you're hearing you may write a chorus and you're hearing all of the melodic instruments, but you're hearing the vocals against that and maybe pushing a certain extension or whatever against what everything else is, and that's a cool thing to be able to.
It is cool, yeah. Are you the same with instruments to be able to do that? Like, can you?
Yeah, I try to do that. That's what. Yeah, I try to conceptualize things in terms of like, what does this do against that? So and I think a lot of writers do. But what would the drums do against the bass? What would the bass be underpinning in the guitar? And then if I had something else on top of the guitar, that would push this. And then the vocal would do this. And then the harmonies would do this. So ultimately, it would make this thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And is that all floating around in your head as you're coming up with a song?
Typically,
It's like all at once. You're kind of bombarded with it.
Yeah.
So how do you pick out? Then how do you filter through that to kind of get the structure sorted out? I mean, if you're hearing everything at once,
right?
What's the process to? turn that into a song? Because I mean, you can't obviously just go and play everything immediately, and there has to be some way of figuring out kind of the
For whatever reason, when it comes to me, when certain melodies come to me, it's like I'll hear that particular, say like a harmony extension, or this against that in terms of like guitar against a key line or the bass underpinning, and it just sticks with me. So it's like when I'll do demos here in my little home studio, and it just seems to really stick in terms of like when I get that idea, it's instead of just hearing just the one thing or just like the guitar and the vocal, whenever I'm going through my lyric book or whatever, it's stuck that that melody is against that melody, and that melody is against that melody, and it's a good thing it sticks, and it makes it a little easier to walk anybody else through it.
For sure. Yeah, because I can imagine that with some people that might get complicated, right? Because you're dealing with so many different elements. It's probably good you don't have a horn section or anything on the extra instruments.
Singing me home before the night is done. Every moment that I spend following you down is heaven sent. Even when you're gone, I can hear you sing. Even when you're gone, I can hear you sing. Well, I'm waiting for the sound, 'cause the melody takes me home. Will you meet me in the air? Sing me home before the night is done. Even when you're gone, I can hear you sing. I am done under restless stars. I've run. Each dawn the sky leads back to another road, another path. Even when you're gone, I can hear you sing. Even when you're gone, I can hear you sing.
I know we've touched on a few people, a few artists that kind of have inspired you. But when you first started getting into music, first started playing music, was there someone that kind of you heard and thought, this is going to make me want to play? Like, was there someone you had an album of that just kind of
I mean, there's a few. Like, I come from a drumming background, and the top three bands for me probably when I first started getting sort of like musically aware and doing things were the Police.
Okay, well, amazing drummer there. Too.
And Led Zeppelin. And and the Beatles.
Okay.
So that was like the big,
pretty iconic for the drum.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was like all of these bands, and all three of those bands have this knack for reinvention of themselves, right?
Sure, yeah.
So it's like if you look at all three of those bands, there's sort of like you could make an album of stuff that's just like acoustic stuff kind of thing typically, or down more mellow stuff that's more edgy or rock,
faster, heavier,
or in the case of the Police, obviously like with the reggae influence and stuff. The early stuff has got like a real punk edge to it, obviously, and so they had this ability to write all of these things, and also all three of those bands have this sort of pop sensibility as well too.
Yeah, really strong. It's kind of just under the surface sometimes, and some of it is like the Beatles especially. It's just like
absolutely, right. So you get to they weren't afraid to sort of stretch the legs and do whatever they needed to do. I mean, but you had Norwegian Wood and you had Glass Onion. You had all of those different elements that they were willing to go places they were willing to go.
Yeah. Well, all three of those bands too, interestingly, are ones that people can be fans of everything they did, or people can be very specific fans of certain eras and certain stuff.
Right.
I mean, like with the Police are a great band. I love their first two records.
Yeah.
The other ones, they're good. I
less so for you.
When I play them, I'm playing the first two albums. That's heavy rotation, right? But the other stuff, and there's people who will go for the later '80s stuff, and they love that. And
Yeah, for some people, like they'll listen to latter day listen to Synchronicity and go, that is everything that I need to fill my boat with that, and they're not so much about the earlier stuff.
But then it's all part of a continuum of
absolutely,
yeah. So what was there a certain record by those bands, or a certain song that kind of?
Oh yeah, like for me, Zeppelin 3 with all the acoustic stuff on it, and that was a real important album for me. Like just to wore that out. Zenyatta Mondatta by the Police, and for the Beatles, they did those two albums, like the Red and the Blue.
Yeah, like the
best
hits one.
The hits one. The psychedelic double album was the one just blew my mind.
Cool.
So those were three important albums for me. Yeah.
Do you feel like a lot of that stuff from when you first started getting into music has seeped into what you're doing now still?
Definitely.
Like, they're still strong?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. It's inspiring, and it's still affects informs what I do today.
Yeah,
certainly.
Well, I think that's usually how it works too. Is that when you first get into music, whatever you're listening to becomes like kind of elevated in your consciousness about what music you like, even if you completely change. Like, I mean, I first started buying tapes and stuff in like the 94, 95. So I was listening to a lot of grunge and stuff. And like since then, I mean, I listen to a lot of different types of music, but I would say that reggae is here, and everything else is like. It's ridiculous.
Fills in the role.
I mean, it's country and hip hop and jazz and whatever, but reggae has always been the thing. Like, the Perry shirt on.
There you go. There you go.
But like, I mean, even though that's the case, and I can talk for hours about ridiculous trivia about these singles that no one cares about from Jamaica, but like a Soundgarden record is still going to be on my top 10 because that was just the thing that kind of.
Absolutely.
Clued me into music, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's, I feel like no matter what area you're from or what band it was, there's always something that. Whatever you do, it's there.
Yeah,
kind of,
absolutely.
Because of your age, and I guess you're really impressionable when you first start getting.
Absolutely. I heard something somewhere where they said that between the ages of roughly, I think it was like 13 and 18, there's a sweet zone where there's all this stuff that's you sort of imprint on. And so I was sitting there going like, well, what was I listening to at that time? And it's true. I'm going, oh yeah, there was that album. Oh yeah, there was that album.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's that album. And I think in terms of life experience too, if you have something that's really a really not stressful, but an important time in your life that you're going through, especially when you're younger. What you're listening to, you imprint, I think, on as well too. So when
because it soundtracks the emotions. And
absolutely. When I think about when I first started getting into like playing on the road and doing those things and expanding my musical circle, and all of the music of that time there's a zillion albums of it. Yeah, that's right within this 4 or 5 year period where it really meant a lot to me. Yeah.
It's weird how your brain does that.
Absolutely.
Because it's happened. Like I mean, I was looking. I'm one of those people who doesn't doesn't listen to digital music. I mean, CDs, yes, but I have like CDs, tapes, records, and everything was physical because I just can't bring myself to get rid of it, right?
Yeah.
And like, going through my tapes and stuff, the amount of tapes I have from that teenage period that I've just never got rid of, they're still there and they're still playing, but they're like barely even. They're still that strong, and it's weird because you don't even think about it. You're just like, I listened to that when I was 13, but it's like, no, I still listen to it.
I still listen to it. It doesn't go away.
Yesterday, I didn't even think about it, but it's cool. It's cool.
That's amazing how many great artists that there are that you when you start to really kind of take an accounting and go, that's why then maybe this I have this sort of bent or my ears tweak this way and whatnot. There was a point in time where it was just like I remember I was listening to a bunch of Bourgeois Tag and Todd Rundgren, and just this really intelligent, well written pop with great guitar playing and great singing and all and Euro pop, Level 42, stuff like that, and Tears for Fears, and just really well written stuff, and that stuff really has a sweet spot in my memory.
So that it kind of creeps in, right?
Just creeps in,
That's cool. Yeah. Well, like I haven't played in a band in about 10 years, and the last band I was in was not, didn't do well. It was fun, but there's definitely, every time someone would describe what they thought the music sounded like, it would be like, I never thought about that, but of course it does, because we were listening to that when,
Right, it comes through. It comes through.
So does that happen to you? Like, do people say, this reminds me of something that you didn't even think was kind of a...
Well, totally, and it can really surprise you. It's like, actually, that kind of makes sense, And that's the thing, is I think... there's a lot of artists that are sort of reluctant to assign, or to describe where they think that certain things come from in their music and whatnot, because it's like it's on the listener to where do you think it came from?
Right. Once it's out of your hands, it's out there. And
once it's out of your hands, it's out of your hands. Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's interesting because you get someone like Bob Dylan who has had 300,000 books written about his music, and who knows, any one of them could be. They could all be wrong from his perspective when he wrote it. Right. It doesn't. It's not his anymore.
It's not his anymore. Absolutely. Yeah.
Who do you think? Do you think there's anyone, as far as a well-known artist or an artist that influenced you, that you sound like to your own ears? Is there somebody that kind of you think, this is a similar style to so to listen to, or is it all just kind of a mixed?
Yeah, it's kind of a mix. Like I have a hard time with. I don't think. I've had people tell me that I sound like certain people, but I don't.
For example, do you know?
You know what? I had for a while. People would tell me that I sounded like Stephen Page.
Okay.
And anytime somebody says something like that, I mean, there are always people that it's just like I respect, and I'm like, that's a great compliment. So that's awesome. I don't necessarily, hear it.
No, I wouldn't.
I wouldn't say. I wouldn't say that I. But for a little while, that was. I would hear that a little bit.
Okay.
It's weird because different people hear different things, right? Right. And it's maybe you sing a certain song in a certain way, and they go, that reminds me of X or Y or Z.
Right.
I will say, in terms of for a long time doing a lot of covers, I worked really, really hard to try and capture inflections of different singers. That's part of the way that we sort of educate ourselves as musicians is when you're mimicking other artists and trying to picking up things and whatnot, and so in doing that, sometimes. It's not so much the tone of your voice or that sounds like that artist, but if you pick up the inflections and the way something is sung or the attitude with which it's sung, that can be what people are hearing sometimes. And because I don't sound like Gord Downey, but I'm singing a hip tune and
something about it.
Or something.
Yeah. Well, I guess that every individual listener has a different kind of catalog of music they've listened to over the years anyway. Absolutely. So they can be picking something that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And in my original stuff, it's like I don't think that. I don't see a correlation between myself vocally in terms of the way I sound with another artist. If somebody else does, that's great.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Well, I think it kind of goes to the difficulty with defining what your sound is because I mean, you said Stephen Page. I wouldn't have thought in a million years that's something you sound like. Right? But I mean, that's obviously someone.
Yeah, somebody.
Right?
Somebody.
But I mean, because. You have the folk element of it, the songwriting and things like that. You've rock influences clearly, as we've discussed. Yeah. I mean, there's soul. Yeah. There's all these things going on. So, does that make it easier for you or harder for you to kind of put your music out there because you're not so specifically?
Yeah. You know what? It's easy for me. Like now, I'm much more comfortable with all of that. Okay. I think for a while, and a lot of songwriters, I think. go through this where it's, what am I? I have to define what it is that I am. Yeah. Like, am I a rock artist? Am I a pop artist? Am I a this? Is this, if I write this song, is this really me? It's like, if you write it, it is really you.
Whatever it is, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you write a song and it sounds like Motley Crue, and then the next song you write sounds like Joni Mitchell, well, that's just that's what's coming out. So, and then really, if you're at it long enough, in the fullness of time, you'll have this library of songs, and that thread that runs through it, that is you, will make itself apparent.
It'll make sense having the Motley Crue influence and the Joni Mitchell.
Absolutely, it'll all sort of make sense. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's the. But earlier on, it was, it was a nightmare. Yeah, because you start writing songs and doing this, and especially if you develop an idea in your head of what you think you should be, or what you are, or whatever. Which I think is another thing that's don't bother going down that road, because it's just, you're going to be who you will reveal yourself to yourself as you go forward,
and it could be totally different from where you started out.
And most likely it will be.
Sure.
You may consider yourself X or Y or Z, but then 40 songs later, it's just like, oh yeah, those are all things that I love, and these are all things that then it's in me. But when I write, what comes out is this whole other thing.
Right, your J or Q or
absolutely, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I was born by the river in a little town. Oh, and like the river, I've been running ever since. It's been long time coming, but I know change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. It's been too hard living, but I don't wanna die, 'cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. I go to the movies and I go downtown. People keep telling me don't hang around. It's been a long time coming, but I know change's gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. When I go to my brother, I say, brother, help me please. But it just winds up knocking me right back down on my knees. Oh, there were times that I thought I wouldn't last for long. Now I know I'm able to carry on. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. it's been long, long, long time coming. Oh, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will.
Two things about Winnipeg that I've noticed just over the course of doing a show and just, being in bands, going to shows, things over the years, is people here, they really like to label things. Like they really like just the exact opposite of what you just said. They like to find a way to put you in a category, right? And so, I mean, you're a punk band, or you're a country artist, or you're a rapper, and I don't know if this is the case everywhere, but I feel like Winnipeg definitely has subgenres of subgenres of subgenres that kind of have their own little scenes and everything. Right. And so how do you, I mean, there's a second part of this question too. Right. Is there a way you can put yourself in one of those, or is it just you float?
That's a very good question, because it becomes a little bit, it becomes more difficult to be a part of, say, a particular scene. Like I have friends that play in bands, and they're like, we're in the the hardcore scene, we're in the punk scene, we're in the sort of retro pop scene, and there are other bands that are in that thing, and that's predominantly what they do. So it's easy for them to
it's very tribal too, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Especially the punk scene, the hardcore scene, that's
absolutely.
You're in a hardcore band, and you're part of this.
You're part of this thing, which is great, which is awesome. And you can twin up bills, and you can do this and do that, and it's really it's much easier to sort of find birds of a feather to sort of do things with and whatnot. But and even outside of my own thing, I've played in a couple of bands where it's just like we just don't necessarily fit in with a general scene.
Whatever it is,
and that can make it a little bit more difficult to sort of where do I fit, but how do I promote this, and how do I find the
it's not
right
as obvious,
venue?
right?
It's not as obvious, I mean, if you can go a couple of different routes with it, but it's like you can't just say, well, then I'll just be this. To me, that doesn't make any sense.
Well, that kind of ties in really well, actually, to what the next part I was going to ask you is you kind of mentioned it a few minutes ago too about what your style is sort of reveals itself over the course of just creating, right? And I think that I don't know if we talked about this when I talked to you on Mom's House, but another thing that I've noticed is very strong here in Winnipeg is, regardless of genre, regardless of what kind of music you're doing, people have a really strong bullshit detector. And there's I think that no matter what kind of music it is, Winnipeggers appreciate honesty, and they like sort of something that's genuine, whatever it is. I mean, absolutely. And that's why someone who maybe is not a great singer can come across, because the feeling is there, right? Like you know that they mean it, kind of thing. That I kind of get from you as well, is that the emotion is behind the songs, and does that help? I mean, does it?
Absolutely. That can trump the idea of like, well, I'm not necessarily, entirely in this scene. Like, I'm not a dyed-in-the-wool, certainly not a dyed-in-the-wool like folk artist. Yeah. But there's enough of that informs my music that if I was to do a gig with somebody who is more in that scene, that it's like, oh, that makes sense. I can see that. Sure. So in one sense it makes it more difficult, but in another sense it's just like it's as a writer it's certainly liberating, and if you work it right, you can find the ways to the workarounds. Yeah.
Is it, as a writer, is it difficult to kind of get that genuineness across, or is that just come naturally? Like, I mean, do you have to? Is there sort of any planning going on in the songwriting process? Like, I don't know if I should say this kind of thing. If it's like, a very personal thing, or do you just kind of write in that it comes out?
Yeah, you just sort of. I find that especially when I'm doing solo gigs, it's a really good detector, because people do have a strong, BS detector, and also there's also the idea that you have your own bullshit detector, right? Yeah. And it's like, if you write a new song and if you're even at all on the fence about a lyric or a phrasing or something, just go play it in front of people. Yeah, and you'll know immediately. You'll know immediately whether or not this doesn't really feel genuine, or So that's the way to kind of shake that out. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just it's with anything. I mean, like hip hop, punk, anything. You can tell. You can, and I don't know if it's because there's so many bands here and everyone's been in each other's bands and people are attuned to it because they kind of either know each other or feel like they know each other because it's tight knit. I don't know.
Yeah. But and people, you're absolutely right. I mean, people in this, thank goodness, in this town, people really do love and appreciate and want like genuine music, and that's another thing that combats the thing of do you not fit in this scene or do you not fit in that scene. If it's to a certain extent, if it's a multi-band bill, it's just like if you come out and you do whatever it is you do,
it doesn't matter.
Honestly, at a decent level, it's like people are just like that's wonderful, that's great, sold, done.
For sure, yeah. Well, I remember I used to play when I was I guess a teenager. There used to be a lot of bills in community centers where there'd be like 20 bands. And it'd be mostly punk bands and stuff. I was in a ska band at the time, it was like, and there'd always be folk singers and rappers and stuff on the bill. Yeah. And it worked. Like, it seems like it should not have worked at all. A bunch of teenagers who were very set in their ways of music, including a lot of punks and stuff, and that scene is very... Yeah. And then, you get some folk singer, like some girl with acoustic guitar opening up, and then we got a ska band, and then there's a rap group. And, like, it's... I don't know if that would always work, that kind of thing. It's always nice when it does. Yeah. But, I think, as long as you're delivering something that's...
And real.
It's real,
just absolutely. Real, People want real.
Yeah.
People want real.
Yeah. Well, especially because they have so many choices now, right? I mean, now you have access to literally any song you want. So if it's not real, you can easily...
Just skip over. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Weird future, dystopian future living in.
Pretty much.
When you started playing, just because this show focuses on local music, when you started playing music in the scene here, were there local bands that you kind of really got into and really sort of...
absolutely. Yeah. That's and I've said this before in a couple of other interviews, like coming up, I didn't realize that a lot of these great Winnipeg bands and local bands were from here.
Right.
I thought that they were from far-flung places.
Right. They just happen to be popular here, but
they happen to be popular. Because and to this day, I still, that's the way, the music. The writing and the music, the execution, all of it was of such a high caliber, and the music meant so much to me. It was just like it sits still side by side with everything else. It wasn't like, this is local music.
Right, good for Winnipeg.
No, it was just like I thought that the Queen City Kids was from New York. I thought that Street Heart was from I think like Los Angeles or something. Like I was shocked to find out that these were local bands, right? Or from regional bands or local bands, right? And we have an embarrassment of riches in terms of musicians and writers in this neck of the woods, so that's good. That's a good thing. But certainly coming up, that stuff had a huge influence on me. Cool. And I've been lucky enough, as things have gone along, to get to play with a bunch of folks from that scene, which is just blows my mind every time I get that opportunity to.
That's always good, right? When you grow up listening to something and then all of a sudden they're right there. And it's really cool,
absolutely.
What was so you like as of at the moment as we're recording this, you don't have a ton of music online available. That obviously is something that you got a lot of videos, but not a lot of actual songs. What are you currently working on as far as like? And you got some recordings coming?
I've got some recordings that I'm in the midst of, and it's been like a labor of love for a long time, and it takes a while to get from point A to point B, but that's that's just part of the process. That's part of the process. And hopefully that'll be remedied within the next little bit, so we get some stuff out for people to take home. And
you've been doing this for a long time. Too,
yes,
so especially to finally be
And for a long time, because I did so much, and I still do, but do so much sort of sideman work and kind of side musician work. You start getting, I'm going to do this, I'm going to record this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that, and then you get involved with this project and that project, and you're pulled out of it and whatnot.
Sure. So your time is spread in all these directions.
Your time or your resources are spread all over. But it's been something for me to over the last year and a bit, so a little longer, to really put the focus on what it is that I do. And make that happen.
Well, and then you have your band as well.
Yes.
Is that just a 3-piece, or do you have?
You know what? It's like I have grand visions for that band. Okay. Typically, we play as a 3-piece. Sometimes as a 4-piece.
Okay.
But there's what I ultimately see with that band is a lot more folks involved.
Okay.
And I think that'll be an extension of the recording process.
Cool.
As I flesh all of those things out.
Okay.
It'll be it'll be interesting for folks to hear and see. And I'm interested in what folks will think when it all comes out.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I mean, a lot of people have seen you live enough times now that they kind of probably recognize a few of the songs that you're going to be recording to.
Absolutely. Yeah.
With the kind of what we talked about near the beginning, the symphony in your head with all the different stuff you're hearing. How hard is it to put that on tape? Like, how hard is it to actually get that out there and get recorded?
There's a portion of it that's really, really easy.
Okay.
But I don't play. I mean, I play X number of instruments. I can hunt and peck on a keyboard.
Right.
I play bass and play guitar and a lot of other things with strings.
Yeah.
And I play drums and sing. But there's other things that you hear and you want to have manifest.
Right.
And it can be. You have to rely on other people for that.
Okay.
Right. If I hear strings or horns or something like that, it's like that and. I can't do that, so I've got to rely on other people to fill in those holes. Yeah.
And is that something you're trying to do? Like, you get more of those sounds?
Absolutely, yeah. Is I mean, like, the songs reveal themselves to you as you go,
right?
And it's and I remember at one point with a bunch of stuff that I recorded, it's like everything has mandolin on it, everything. it's just the way it sort of starts to shake out,
Okay.
And that could use fiddle. Wow, it'd be neat. If I got to get somebody to play some like really nice piano on this.
Yeah.
Blah 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 blah. Yeah.
Well, I guess all of those instruments, Winnipeg's got like a ridiculous amount of
absolutely,
the folk scene so huge here. It's
absolutely, yeah.
So I mean, with all of the sideman stuff you're doing, and you seem to be playing pretty regularly with the band as well, and doing solo shows. What is sort of the once you have recordings out there, once you're kind of more established, this is my sound, this is my solo, what are you planning to do with that? Do you have time with everything else that's going on to sort of, pursue that further? Or is it just going to be sort of keep on pushing it along with all the other stuff you got?
Yeah, it's you got to make time for it, right?
Sure,
that's kind of the whole point. I mean, it's something that I do because I feel compelled to do it. It's something that I feel like I need to do. And then once it's done, you just sort of assess bit by bit. But yeah, absolutely, you want to go down the rabbit hole and take it as far as you can. Yeah. For sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
How far have you gone with it? Like, I mean, you've obviously played in other cities and things. You've done all that. Yeah. But what is, I guess, what's the ultimate goal with your music?
Oh, I think with anybody's. I mean, I think if you asked any songwriter, it certainly it applies to me. It's like if you can do if you can advance your career to the point where it's like this is what you do, and you can do it comfortably. Yeah, right. Right. Whether it's sweating every month or whatever like
without
that.
Needing
that's
the
exactly,
day job or without needing.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the thing. I'm always. Winnipeg has had a lot of great artists who have turned. It's awesome to watch to turn like that innate talent that they have into a living. We say to a lot of artists as of this recording. I mean, there's so many of them, and it's that's the goal. That's the goal for I think any songwriter or any artist like that. I think is
And those are often the ones that make it through from just like constant working, right?
Yeah, you got to work. You got to work it. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the whole thing. At some point in time, you have to really kind of just commit to getting that and getting it done and working it like, however hard you think you need to work. Yeah. Take that and double it and then double it again.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because I mean, a lot of people I think start off playing in bands thinking that this is going to make them famous, and then it doesn't happen within the first year, and then just give up, right?
And then just give up. Yeah.
Same with podcasting. The amount of people who start podcasts in Winnipeg, and I'm always excited to see it because cool, someone's doing a show, and then 10 episodes in they give up because it's not paying off.
It's not paying off.
So I guess it's all about
it's the long game.
Continued,
it's the long game. Yeah, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Yeah.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
So if people are hearing you for the first time on this show, what's the best thing for them to do to find out where you're playing, find out more of your
If they go to www.joecurtisband.com, that's probably the best place. There's links there to Instagram and Facebook. So I'm also on the social media, things like that. But to get an idea of what's up, certainly joecurtisband.com is a place to go.
And I mean, there's obviously the Mom's House interview we did. As a bunch of performances and stuff. That was cool.
That was so much fun.
That was super fun. Yeah. Well, I never know. Like, I mean, I've done a few of those now, and I think I've done like 8 of them or something. And a lot of the time, it's people I've never met before. And I do this every week too. People I've never met before a lot of the time. But I never know if I'm gonna connect or if there's gonna be like a common ground. And then as you're warming up, you start playing the Sam Cooke song. I'm like, okay, I got this.
We got this.
This is good. I got something I can talk about.
We were off to the races.
Yeah, for sure. And then so people can hear some of your recorded stuff on there too, right? You have some demos on
Absolutely,
there?
yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. And if people want to hear more episodes of this show, you can go to witchpolice.com. All 300 and whatever episodes are there for free download and streaming. You can go back to 2012 if you have you want to hurt your ears. Listen to some
go
really
down the rabbit hole, yeah.
But I mean, like we've been talking about all these local bands. There's so many of them that have been on the show that maybe one day one of those bands is going to huge, and it's going to be like, oh, cool, this is, So that's it's I'm not playing in bands anymore. Maybe someone that I've become friends with through doing this is going to, and I can live vicariously through them.
Absolutely.
Look at this, I knew this person back when, whatever. But, of course, we're also on all of the social media. Witchpolice is weird enough that you find that name, you're probably going to find this.
Oh, yeah.
This show also airs on Sunday nights at midnight on UMFM, and those are older episodes that kind of get a second wind. So,
awesome.
I mean, it could be 4 months from now that airs on their station, but it's kind of cool because, they're always available as a podcast. People can download them whenever, but if you happen to be tuning in...
Yeah, you can turn it to something that you just... Yeah.
Right, and then you can go back and find the actual episode and learn more about the person. So, yeah. So that's the podcast. So
wicked.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
Water got a little too deep to cross. I'll wait on the banks, keep a fire on shore. Fall just set foot in the dark. Summer comes bittersweet, then it's hard. Days they got short, the nights got cold. Courage breaks the dark, then it's gone. Across the river, across the river, when the water got a little too deep to cross, I'll wait on the banks, keep fires on shore. Fall just set foot, days get short.